Here we go.
No Nation. Welcome into another episode of the Renegade Rundown with Jen Santee, 1890, aka Jen Knoll 2013, and my good friend at Deshawn Adams, 18, aka Deshawn Adams. You can find both those guys by those Twitter handles I threw out there. Mine is Renegade Report 1. You can find me on Twitter, or X as the kids are calling it. Today's show, we are going to talk all about Florida State football within the Atlantic Coast Conference. We've had ACC Media Days going on the past 2 days. Big 10 Media Days started today, I believe. We had SEC Media Days last week, and the talk of the town for all three conferences, all four conferences, really, when you break it down, has been Florida State. Clemson to some degree, but mostly Florida State. Greg Sankey kind of, threw all kind of, spurs out there, talk shit. Oh, well, Georgia was one of the best four teams, but we didn't see us jumping up and down for them to get in the playoff. But you did jump up and down to get Alabama in, which is kind of the whole point. Mike Norvell responds at ACC Media Days when asked the question, basically says, yeah, well, they earned those wins and all that. They were, sure, if you want to talk about a power rating, they may have been one of the four best teams, but they also earned their loss on the field. All Florida State did go is they handled everything in front of them. We've been having fun with the sign at the ACC Media Days out there. Giant banner, like the official banner up there for the ACC. Toughest non-conference schedule in all of college football. I guess
the most beta shit I've ever seen in my life.
Excuse me, go ahead.
I said it's the most beta male shit I've ever seen in my life to do that. I am stunned and embarrassed. I'm getting secondhand embarrassment by looking at it, to be fair.
It is hilarious. But yeah, as far as the show goes, we're going to talk about that. Jim Phillips got up there and said a whole lot of nothing. Defended the honor of John Swofford. We're going to talk about that. We've got camp opening tomorrow. We're going to talk about that as we're sitting here 30 days away from camp opening. But the main theme is conference realignment. That's, what everybody wants to talk about in the entire nation, not just Florida State fans, not just ACC fans. It's been everybody. Everybody for the past 2 weeks has been telling Florida State fans how, crazy they are, and the Big 10 doesn't want them, and the SEC doesn't want them, and they better take this spot in the Big 12, and all these things. Everybody got their 5 minutes of fame. The Arizona blogger got it. Brett Muschamp, or whatever his freaking name is, Brett McMurphy, got him a couple million views off of it. Everybody has got their views and everything. This week, we've got a little bit of cooler heads have prevailed. We've got some national writers coming out there and telling you guys in tweet storms, whether it's David Hale or even guys like Dellinger circling back and telling you guys exactly what the hell we've been telling you all the whole time. So it's all fun and games, a lot of fun stuff to talk about. But how are we doing today, Jen?
Good. Doing good. Yeah. Me retweeting that, little old me retweeting that pathetic sign got a bunch of people worked up in the North Carolina area. And national guys have been making fun of this. Like, it's a joke. It's hilarious. It's pathetic. It's embarrassing. It's giving little brother vibes to me, but sure.
How we feeling? How you doing today, Deshawn? I know you weren't feeling too good the other day. What caught your eye from the ACC Media Days and everything else?
I'm doing fine, first and foremost. Thank you for asking. Much better. The biggest thing I'll get from this is the same thing we've gotten over at least the last 4 years, and it's just a complacency and being comfortable being in the position you're in. If you have a commissioner like Phillips, then you're in a position of he kind of got dealt a crazy hand, but then on the other hand, he's not made it better. He's not done those things like a Sankey to advance the conference. So the biggest thing I get is, like Jen said, it's laughable. It is a bit of a joke when you think about the signing itself and then just where we find ourselves as a whole.
Yeah, Jim Phillips, and just even address that. Like, you want to talk about getting dealt a shitty hand or whatever. This goes all the way back to John Swafford. That's why his name keeps coming up. That's why when we talk about this stuff, we talk about him. That's why Jim Phillips brought him up, defending him at that podium. Jim Phillips wasn't so much dealt a bad hand as he was paid to take a shitty hand. He was paid. He kind of came in knowing what the deal was. I'll go to my grave believing that. Uh, some folks may want to believe he really thought he was going to come in there and make ACC a power conference. But from everything I've seen from Florida State side, from Clemson side, the past 2-3 years of trying to put things forward, be it unequal revenue sharing, or let's look at the possibility of adding these teams. They had done not any of it. They've gone the opposite way. Back to what had Jen so aggravated and laughing at him with that sign. Well, look how shitty the in-conference schedules are. We were talking about it off air. When you look at teams like Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Deshawn mentioned another team, NC State. Their schedules, I mean, it looks like a G5. I make fun of the Big 12, but I knew it was going to be bad. Adding Cal, adding SMU, adding Stanford. While SMU looks like they may be a borderline top 25 team this year, they may have a little run going. Cal and Stanford, I mean, the level of these freaking schedules, it's just terrible. Virginia Tech and Syracuse, like, they could win 9 or 10 games and be just not very good at all. Virginia Tech, some people think they're going to be pretty good, but I don't think between the two of them they play 5 or 6 bowl teams all year. They miss North Carolina. They miss Florida State. They miss NC State. They miss Louisville. It's like they miss the entire top half of the ACC. They play 5 of the 6 worst teams in the league and only 2 of the top 10 teams. So it's like, it's really, really bad. Some folks, I think Jim was alluding to, oh yeah, well, they put that on there, to point out to the college football playoff that they do have tough schedules. Well, it doesn't matter how tough your non-conference schedule is if your in-conference schedule is an absolute pile of junk. And that's what it is with adding these teams. And the way they structured those, like you have one rival or 2 rivals that you play every year, that's really screwed it up. Because FSU playing Clemson and Miami every year and a couple other teams doing that has got it where there's 10 teams, 11 teams in the conference who don't play any of the top 3 teams for years on end. It's like, it's bad.
Yeah. I was just taking a gander at the NC State schedule and I was like, okay, the toughest game they have is Tennessee and it's out of conference. I'm just touching on it a little bit. Outside of that, once again, they're another program that ducks the on paper best 3 programs in the conference. It's Miami, Florida State, Clemson. You got too many teams that we have considered the bottom feeders, or those who are making money off the backs of the main 2 programs, ducking these games, and they're getting the favorable schedules. And all it does is set up. I'll be honest with you, I have a bad feeling about certain things in a way, not the way the season will go for us, but just the way things are going to be set up with some of these programs, particularly those on Tobacco Road.
How happy are you going to be when, for whatever reason, say Florida State loses to Clemson or loses 2 games, whatever the case may be, they're 10-2 or 11-1. Okay. And a Virginia Tech gets in with the same record, but they just have some tiebreaker or whatever the case may be. Say Miami beats us or whatever. And since they don't play them, somehow that gives them the tiebreaker. How are you going to feel with a team going to the ACC Conference Championship over you with a schedule like this? Vanderbilt, Marshall, Old Dominion, Rutgers, Miami, pretty decent one, Stanford, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Clemson. Okay, that is one decent game on their whole schedule. Duke, Virginia. Now, if Duke still had the coaches that's at Texas A&M, I would make that one another tough game on there. But no, Duke first-year coach, like, I mean, that is just crazy. Like, it's not fair. And Syracuse, I think, is even worse. Syracuse, Ohio, Georgia Tech, Stanford, Holy Cross, UNLV. They get NC State, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech. You're going to have to count that as a tough game on their schedule. Boston College, California, UConn, and Miami.
Now,
Like,
to
and
be
there's a
fair about
chance
Virginia
Miami could suck.
Tech's,
Like,
yeah.
sorry, Jen, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, to be fair about Virginia Tech's schedule, didn't they lose to Old Dominion last year, though?
I believe they did. I believe they did. Yeah.
Just saying, maybe they rescheduled them for some revenge.
Mhm.
But yeah, Virginia Tech and the NC States and the Miami's probably should be on the lookout for Duke. I'm sorry. I think Duke is going to go into Miami with good old Manny Diaz and beat them. I do. 100%. That's revenge for them. I think Duke would throw every other game and then just go in and put it all in on Miami for fun. I think Manny Diaz, that's his goal.
Yeah.
It would be funny for sure.
I mean, I think it's set up the way it's set up and the way they set up these schedules with particularly Syracuse. This was a Dino Babers special with the way they do. They always front loaded easy games, and then when they play tougher games, they turn around and have like 6-game losing streaks. So that's what I'm seeing with that. I wouldn't be
It's a tough game
surprised.
on that schedule.
Yeah, it's a tough game for them. That's just like who'd you name that has UNLV on their schedule?
Syracuse
That's not
ain't
gonna.
not
Yeah,
a tough game.
that's
They
not a.
got
That, yeah,
Clemson the last game of the year, but they got literally 5 of the bottom 6 teams in the entire league, and they scheduled nobody out of conference. It's bad.
yeah. I wouldn't be, but it sets up for a situation, George, where they can beat their chest if they win, but then it's a huge embarrassment if and when they lose. Because I wouldn't be surprised if UNLV lights Syracuse up. If you know anything about college football, you know UNLV's offense is very, very explosive, and they had a winning record the last 2 years, I believe, and they can put up points quick. So it sets us up to be embarrassed as a conference, which I don't care because I won out.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's an embarrassment anyway. But it's just that's been the status quo. Even when we've had head-to-head winning battles because we're so disrespected and the conference is such a joke that it doesn't even matter. You had a winning record again out of conference last year, but it doesn't matter. You still get laughed at. You've had decent teams, they still get laughed at because the overall and the bigger picture of the conference is this conference is not about football. I mean, you turn on ACC network and you see lacrosse. You see
women's lacrosse,
women's lacrosse, women's soccer. It's nothing wrong with those Olympic sports, but as we've discussed, and I've discussed with you, George, we all know the bill player does not get the headlines. Even yesterday they used the platform for the football season to celebrate Olympic sports. They have no clue of what we're supposed to be doing here. Why are we here if you're going to talk about sports that don't bring in revenue? They take money.
Yeah, it's almost like the things he says are just like, it's almost like in spite. Like, we all know the joke. We all know the conference is going to hell and that we're not really going to do anything, but we'll just say it. The last line of his press conference, I believe, was something along the lines of, if you win, you get rewarded. Somehow, Clemson and Florida State have done a lot of winning for the ACC. I haven't seen much awarding going on. And I knew it was going to be bad adding those 3 teams to the league, but it really has devastated the schedules. When you do away with the divisions, I thought it was pretty good to level everything out, which it did, but it dropped the strength of schedule of the entire conference. It did when you drop divisions, because what you had is the Atlantic Division, who everybody had killer schedules. Half the conference had legit second or third toughest conference or division in the country. And that was hands down, year in, year out for 4 or 5 years. The Coastal squad, there was like one bowl team over there. But that was fine because, North Carolina, Miami, they played a couple Atlantic teams every year. Well, when you drop divisions, all it did was give FSU, Clemson a couple extra cupcakes, but they were still pretty tough schedules. Adding these 3 teams, now, I'm going to be nice to SMU. We all are. Like, we're not trying to shit on SMU. But when you look historically of what SMU has been, it is a step down from the top 8, top 9 teams of the ACC. For a while there were top 40, top 50 teams, and it was pretty good. It was fun. You had the Atlantic Coast, and you had a team or 2 in the Coastal every year. But now it's become a thing where you've got 4, 5, 6 decent teams, and then 11 just dragging you down. 11, just, whatever you want to call it. And you end up with a Virginia Tech or a Syracuse. If you only have 8 conference games, there's way too many shitty teams, and you end up with a schedule that it's just not proportionate. It's really it's a shame. I don't want to stick on it all day, but seeing some of these schedules, it really opened my eyes to how bad it's gotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, and y'all laugh, but wait till Virginia Tech loses to Vanderbilt. Y'all can laugh all you want to, but wait until Virginia Tech loses to Vanderbilt. I'm going to laugh my ass off.
Yeah, it will be real funny, especially considering another thing that came out around ACC Media Days was the preseason All-ACC list as far as ACC Player of the Year. I believe it had about 12, 15 names on it, something like that. 4, count them, 4 players off of Virginia Tech's team are up for ACC Player of the Year. How many you reckon there are on Florida State's squad? I'll tell you. 0. Not a single player on Florida State's team on the watch list for the preseason All-ACC team, but 4 from Virginia Tech. And again, I don't know if that's because they looked at the schedule and they're like, Tyrone Jones, all these guys, they're really going to go off or what. But I get being excited for Virginia Tech. It's just funny how these teams get treated that recruit for shit, and all they've done is development and good feelings and all that stuff. But somehow they end up with 4 players on the. But then it's like it's crazy. And just to put that into perspective, there's another list that came out today. Most of us are familiar with it, the East and West Shrine Bowl. It's kind of like the whatchamacallit. It's kind of like the Senior Bowl. Just another version of the Senior Bowl. 18 Florida State players on there. Basically, every senior on the offensive or defensive 2 deep gets an invite to the East-West Shrine Bowl, and that's a big number. 18. That means what we predicted. That bodes at least 10, 11 guys getting drafted again. And how you can have far and away the most NFL players on your team and all that stuff, and somehow not have a single on the preseason All-ACC list is it's crazy for me.
I find that preseason All-American list quite odd because we do have returning players who actually made last year's actual all-conference list. So it doesn't make sense. So you're telling me 0. Pat Payton, wasn't he an all-conference player last year?
Player of the Year, not All-ACC at all.
Okay, I misunderstood. Player of the year.
So the player of the year is not someone they would think would be an All-ACC player at the beginning of the next year? Or is that just because they're sitting there like cleaning Jim Phillips' shoes? I'm not sure. You tell me. I wasn't in the room.
Yeah, definitely being All-ACC will help you as far as like at your position. But just to be clear, that list was talking about the Heisman Trophy for the ACC conference, if you will, the conference MVP. It's their quarterback, their running back, they're one of their wide receivers, and I believe a D lineman or something like that.
Yeah.
But Florida State's got nobody up for the award, which is pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Another thing. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, why would you? Why would you put a Florida State player up there to get people to actually watch or pay attention to your bullshit list? No offense, because nobody gives a shit about those other teams other than Clemson and Florida State. You can quote me, put it on a meme, put it on a damn T-shirt. I don't care. Nobody else cares either. So good luck.
Yeah. Well, as if this team didn't need more motivation coming off of last season's end. It's just more fuel to the fire, so it's fine. Take that and use it as fuel.
Yeah, the guys, in case you guys didn't know, Mike Norvell brought Pat Payton, Joshua Farmer, and Darius Washington with them to the ACC Media Days. 3 guys who were brought in at high school, one in 2019, during the Willie Taggart years, his last recruiting class there, and the other 2 in the 2021 recruiting class. Pat Payton was the number 329 overall recruit in 2021. Darius Washington was the number 498 overall recruit in 2019. And our guy, Josh Farmer, was the number 649 recruit in 2021. and 20. So I got that wrong. It's 19, 20, and 21. So all 3 different years. But all, anywhere from 329 to 649 for those 3 recruits. And they're all sitting up there as top 100 prospects in the NFL. Pat Payton has been widely predicted to be a first-round draft pick, and Farmer and Washington are both guys that are thought to go top 3 rounds, but could easily work their way up to a second first-round pick. So we'll see what happens with those 2. Big time, big time. And then when you want to look at kind of where Florida State is now versus that, we've seen they've been able to develop these 3 stars, bring them up, make them legit NFL prospects. You've seen what they've been able to do through the portal with their first big portal draft class last year. They had 9 guys taken. Number 44, Javian Hilson. Number 24, Solomon Thomas. And number 58, Kevin Wynn. That's pretty amazing to look at their counterparts in the 2025 class. So at defensive end, your guy, he's, only about 300 spots higher. Your offensive line guy, he's only about 470 spots higher on the recruiting board. And at defensive tackle, your guy, he's only a cool 590 spots higher. So for the people out there acting like Florida State isn't climbing and the recruiting isn't doing what it needs to do and getting better and better and better, I thought that was a pretty amazing comparison to have those 3 guys with him at, ACC Media Days, and to kind of look at the 3 guys that are committed for the class of 2025.
Well, George, I feel like that statement was just using someone for clout, for saying that someone isn't happy with recruiting, would be my guess. It's a joke. It's a joke. Using someone. Okay, never mind.
I think I got what you're going. I just didn't know.
I caught it. I caught it. I'll add to it, George. I just say this: you can see development is the first thing you speak to when you talk about the 3 participants at the media days. You think about Pat; he came in maybe about barely 210, maybe 205. He's now down there 260. You look at Darius Washington's development, and then Joshua Farmer. He was 250 defensive end coming in. He's now over 300 pounds. So you look at the development. You speak to that. It's taken some time, and like everything, the climb. When we speak to climb, that's what it's about: development and time. And then to speak to what you just elaborated on with the class now, is your floor and what you're bringing in now from the high school ranks is better than what you have now. And these 3 guys are all conference level, potential All-American caliber type players that were homegrown. So if you basically bringing in better high school talent than you did 4 years ago. So with that development level, you're looking for it to skyrocket and take you to higher heights. And that's all our climb is. We're going to go to a higher height.
Oh, yeah. But we've said it a bunch. I've said it a bunch. By the time, not talking shit about this team or 25's team, it's going to be a ton of fun. This year's going to be a ton of fun. We're probably making the playoffs. Book those Charlotte reservations, all that stuff. Same thing for 2025. But when 2026 gets here, 2027, God willing, Mike Norvell is still the coach. When you put those classes together, think about it. In 2026, your oldest class will be the 2023 class, which will be a pretty damn good class. And then you follow that up with, who knows? The blue chip ratio will be up around 70, 80%. You're going to be up there. That's when you'll be able to talk shit with the Georgias and Ohio States of the world, as far as, we've got just as good of players as anybody in the nation. We're still in that mode of we've got to develop a little bit better, to beat those top 3 or 4 teams, but we do have as much talent as the majority of teams in college. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
No doubt about it. We found out via conference realignment through reports. We've widely reported here that we, more than likely it would be after August 15th that we find out before Florida State would announce their, exit from the ACC. And that's what the reports are saying. Most of the reports have come out and said, indeed, that Florida State most likely will pass up the August 15th date. And Florida State. And what that means is that Florida State will not only be in the ACC for 2024, but 2025. And that would put them If they were be able to do it a year later, they'd be able to, get to the Big 10 or the SEC or whatever the case may be by 2026, which is what we've long said is the most likely year. We would all love for something big to happen, and there's still time. We still got a couple weeks until August 15th. If something happens, if a settlement happens, if some crazy big discovery is made, who knows? If Fox and ESPN get together and figure out some way to make each other happy, or for one to really piss the other one off and sign us, then that would be great. But as it looks, and according to all the big heads out there, not going to happen. And what's important about that is all the reporting that we've been battling the past 2 weeks of the SEC doesn't want FSU, the Big 10 doesn't want them, and all this reporting was done, and nobody put it in there, but they were speaking of in this moment, right now. Like, and that was never on the table. Like, I don't know of a single person who ever reported that being on the table. So having cooler heads prevail, having David Hale come out, and I'm not going to go through all of what he said because he basically just said everything we've been saying nonstop about this thing. Yes, when Florida State can get out, when they get done with their lawsuit, whatever the case may be, when they become a free agent, they are not going to the Big 12. They're going, they're going to have a shot. They did all this, the SEC or the Big 10 is going to have to look at them, and we all know it. And it's just hilarious because it's one thing for people like us, that just love college football. We have a podcast. We like to talk about everything that's going on, talk recruiting, talk realignment, say X channel, whatever conference, whatever team, we understand that. But when every single media day is taken over by Florida State in their realignment discussions, Big 10, SEC, now ACC, it's almost hilarious for somebody to say that FSU doesn't move the needle or they can't see an upside for adding them to your conference. Like, I mean, is there any other team in the country that could, cause this kind of ruckus and every single conference media days end up being about them? I can't even imagine it.
No,
I would say Notre Dame, except for nobody would ever have the guts to say anything about Notre Dame because they never do and they never will. But that would be my only other one right now that's kind of out there with the possibility. But yeah, and my other thing is that, all these reporters, Florida State is not talking to the Big 10 and the SEC because they can be caught with tampering, and yet in the same breath are like, the Big 12 has talked to the Florida State and Clemson, and they're doing private equity. That's still tampering, you dummies. You can't have one without the other. So either make your report or don't make your report. Stop using Florida State fans for clicks. It's embarrassing, and I'm going to start calling you guys out. I have, and I'm going to continue to do it. You're sad. And no real team that's run by a real board of trustees, Florida State and Clemson, looking at you, they're not going to go to a conference funded by private equity. It's not financially feasible. It's not smart. It's a disaster. Schools could do private equity. A whole conference that runs a bunch of schools is not going to do that. It's just not. Nobody, I mean, maybe they think it up and they're like, it seems like fan fiction a little bit to me, and that's fine. Y'all have your fan fiction novels. We're going to live over here and understand that it's not going to happen. Okay?
Yeah. I'll put it this way. Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Alabama, Auburn, and I believe, and LSU. Then I'll throw Michigan and Ohio State. What do they all have in common? Outside of Clemson and Florida State, those are the programs that have cleaned house and winning more than one national championship in the last freaking fucking 40 years. Don't tell me or anybody else that Florida State doesn't have any value. Don't tell, even speaking with Clemson, 7 national championships in 40 years have been won by the ACC. 6 split in half. You give Georgia Tech their little funky half in 90 that they won and split with Colorado. Outside of that, anything that's been won in football in the conference has either come through Tallahassee or Clemson, South Carolina. Don't tell people, or don't tell us as fans of this program and followers, supporters, that we don't have any value and that we're not valued by the other 2 conferences, especially when you look at the Big 10. Like we've said, Now that you add USC, now you could add their caliber. But when we're talking about just championships up until now within those conferences, those are the programs that have won a national championship in those two, the big two. And
Yeah,
outside of that, it's either come through Tallahassee or it's come through Clemson.
yeah. When you're not wanted, when you don't move the needle, people don't talk about you. They don't
Mhm.
talk to you. You get left on red. Florida State is not getting left on red, and I'll leave that at
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
Encyclopedia with a $2 super chat.
thank
Go
you.
Noles, keep up the good work, guys. Big 10 bound. I hope you are right, my friend. And that's what we are going to keep reporting right here at what's the name of the channel again? Right here at the Renegade Report. But this guy on Twitter at No Lifestyle is his at. I wanted to give him a shout out because
Mhm.
I've thought about this and I've talked about it, but I've never really looked at the numbers. But we've talked a lot about, how could Florida State end up in the SEC? We've said that constantly from the beginning, even though we want Big 10, the SEC is an outside shop. They don't want FSU and Clemson going to the Big 10 because that would really, really even things up. You could start having arguments about the Big 10 being the premier conference, being the better conference. Well, national titles is the name of the game.
Mhm.
When they do recruiting, they base it on first round picks. National titles is kind of that for coaches. That's like the cream of the crop, the top of the line.
Mhm.
And we've talked about it a ton. Really, the ACC, they've got more national titles. They've done better than the Big 10 in the past 10, 15 years. It's why
Mhm.
it's so shameful that the ACC is looked at the way it is around the country because it's pure marketing. It's been shit marketing, purely run, shitty run. We've talked about all the different ways. Don't want to get all into that, but it's
Mhm.
ridiculous. To have 5 national championships since 1992, what does
Mhm.
that mean? I mean, you're talking about a large percentage of all of them. To have 3 in the past 11, 12 years, you're talking about a quarter, a third of all the national
Mhm.
championships from one
Mhm.
conference. And the SEC dwarfs it, but it's triple what the Big 10 had up until last year. It's still
Mhm.
3-2.
Mhm.
But if the Big 10 were to add FSU and Clemson, and you go back to 1980, that would give the SEC 21 national championships and 17 national championships for the Big 10.
Mhm.
If the SEC were to add FSU and Clemson, that would make 11 national championships for the Big 10 and 27 for the SEC.
Mhm.
That is a giant swing. Basically, if the SEC gets its hands on FSU and Clemson, it's night night, blouses, whatever you
Mhm.
want to call it.
Yes.
The SEC will end up with 5 auto bids, and the Big 10 will be looking at 2 or 3,
Mhm.
and then whatever. If you want to talk about whether whatever's left of the Big 12 and the ACC gets one, I don't know. But to go from, if FSU and Clemson go to the Big 10, there's a 4 national title spread between the two. If it goes the other way, 16. I mean, that's huge. So tell me again, you want a reason why Big 10 has a reason to want to add FSU and Clemson? There's your reason right there.
Yeah. There's only been a few programs that at their peak could even beat consistently SEC teams, and Florida State is one of them. Outside of SC, outside of Ohio State, Michigan, and Clemson, FSU is the only other program that's went head to head with SEC programs consistently and beat them. And
Going back to Jen's banner,
yeah,
when you talk about the toughest out of your conference schedule, who are you fucking talking about? You're talking about LSU 2 years in a row. You're talking
yeah,
about South Carolina every year,
yeah.
Florida every year. You're talking
Hmm.
about Georgia and Clemson. You're
Hmm.
talking about even Miami going out and getting Texas A&M and whoever that.
Hmm.
Because Virginia, we seen Virginia Tech's out of conference schedule.
Yeah.
We seen Syracuse's.
They
It's
lose them.
dog shit.
Yes. They couldn't
Like
even.
Jen said, let them lose to Vanderbilt. That's going to
Yeah.
be a real
I'm gonna
black
laugh my
eye to
ass off.
Deshawn's point.
Exactly. It's going to be a point. It's set up to either be pat on the back or real embarrassing with those some of these programs that are favored now and have all of the hype. Let them have the hype. I take the substance over the hype. We've seen how this works out.
I just don't get how that's fine for Virginia Tech, but it's not for Florida State. Like you can look at Virginia Tech's schedule and what they've got and say, okay, let's give them 4 all-conference players, and they're
Mhm.
underdogs of the year. They got an 8.5 win total. They're going to win 9. They're going to do all this stuff. But you can't look at Florida State's schedule and say, well, damn, Florida State's schedule is way easier than it's been the past 3 years. They don't play anybody till week 6 or week 7. They're going to be in good shape. They've got all this coming back. It just comes out to this stuff is fun to talk about. People are going to pull for their teams. They're going to shine a light on this. They're going to shine a light on that. But the East-West Shrine Bowl, you know what they're doing? They're looking who the best seniors or redshirt juniors or however they come up with the cutoff. Azaria Thomas isn't on there, so it's obviously not true juniors. Only the redshirt juniors or seniors, redshirt seniors on that list. 18 players for Florida State. 18. That's second in the entire country. So that isn't like some kind of misnomer or something. Similar, I believe Michigan had 22 or something before the year last year. And it said that, you know, I brought up how when they do recruiting rankings, they look at first round talent. They're really big on that. There's a theory out there that you don't win with second, third, fourth round talent. You win with first round talent. I'm not a believer of that in college football. I think, yes, the best teams are going to have some first round talent. You might want to have one at quarterback or running back. You got to have them in there, but you don't need the whole damn team. Like, no, exactly. Michigan, and I pointed this out on the show, we had more elite talent get drafted this year than Michigan by a good bit. It wasn't even close. We got the first one in the first round before them, and then we had, after they had their first round pick, we had 2 picks before they had their next one in the bottom of the second or at the beginning of the third round. So, yeah, dominated them in that aspect, but they had like 18 guys drafted. And, you know, they're the national championship team, again, over a team that had a 35% or 38 blue chip ratio. But I digress. I put the phone number up there. It's 850-495-1906. I know we're kind of all over the place. That's my fault. I didn't have a written itinerary. We just getting on here and talking about what's in the news as we're just so ready to get to football. It's going to be so fun to come in here Friday and talk about how the first 2 days of camp went. We're literally 30 days away from getting ready for pregame in Ireland. Can't wait for that, to talk football, to talk about what all these different teams did, be able to touch on recruiting a little bit here and there and the different things. But we really, really appreciate everybody that's been with us through the entire off season as we've kind of got into the minutia of all this stuff. Again, if you got any questions, now's the time. Pick up the phone to call. I don't know what we've covered. Jen, Deshawn, if there's anything y'all want to talk about or whatever, any particular subjects, feel free to take the lead.
Did we know North Carolina fans were this weird?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not exactly what I was thinking on subjects, but yeah, I imagine every fan base certainly has their weirdos, and if it's going to be North Carolina, yeah, I imagine they have their fair shares.
Maybe we should tackle them in the roast on Monday, because I feel like those Argyle-wearing attorneys need it. You know what I mean?
Boat shoes wearers.
You know, I'll touch on just the pride aspect and just looking at the whole layout in which we touched on, and I'm not going to leave it at this before we move on. The things that's just been said is just like you said, George. If we're not an important or relevant program, as which we've often seen just to get engagement, we know a lot of times it's just an engagement tactic, then you wouldn't be talking about us. And it's kind of fun, and sometimes it can be a little it can become a headache. It can be tiring to constantly have to battle these trolls, or you just ignore them. But it's ignorance to think that we don't have a place, and it's really, people don't understand the legal system. I think I tweeted it maybe a few days back, is most of the people who make these comments, their only interaction with the legal system is please rise, you know, can we, you know, all rise for the honorable so and so, because they see it from that perspective. They don't understand the legalities when it comes to business and when it comes to these boardrooms and big money. And Florida State is a big money program. There's no way they're going to sit idly by and not be taken by one of the big money conferences. And that's all I'm really at.
I look, I totally agree with you. I think it's hilarious to me for people to say Florida State sucks, they're irrelevant, and yet all these media guys wake up every morning, do a news story, ask the Big 10 guys, ask the SEC guys, what about Florida State? What about Florida State? for such an irrelevant program, they sure spend a lot of their media days talking about it. So miss me with it. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit about Penn State, by the way, whoever this dude is in the chat, or Michigan State. Sorry, even worse. It's just sad. It's giving such jealousy vibes. It's like, okay, I mean, they got to get their clicks up. I get it. Nobody cares about reporters. They all lie. We all know it. And that's all they need to do is just spur up controversy and make people hate each other. That's their job.
Facts.
I'm just laughing at the Michigan State comment. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. You spend your evening. Hey, thank you for the like. Please make sure you do hit like and you share and subscribe. Please do that for us. But I find it funny that we have to hear the comment. I mean, noted fact, we've never lost to Michigan State. We've 2-1 against Michigan. We've never lost to Ohio State. Michigan State is irrelevant. I mean, irrelevant now. You're now what? You fired your what? You're on your what now in the last 6 years, 7 years? Fourth coach, fourth coach. So I mean, why are you here poking the bear when you haven't won a championship since before we went to the moon, I believe? I mean, what are we talking about? You're a middle tier program in the power conference. And your best, you couldn't beat us. At our best, we'll win a national championship. At your best, you may get to the Rose Bowl. That's all we're going to talk about.
We had somebody, I think I missed a call on a question, but I think he texted it in. He says, it's funny. This is a funny question to ask a Florida State podcast, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here and read it. Who is a bigger brand and better blue blood program, Miami or FSU?
This is a joke, right?
Yeah, well, as far as this show, I guess it could be considered a joke, but I don't think he's joking. I think at one point in time, there was a time in history when Miami might have been considered that.
And we use we use VCRs then. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Just go ahead. Shit on Miami. I know you got plenty to shit on Miami. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, there was a time when Miami would be considered the better program, but we use VCRs then. Nobody is paying any attention to Miami other than whatever goes on down there when we want to make fun of their coach not being able to use a playbook or take a knee or coach a team or do anything relevant other than cattle their players into a corral while nobody is sitting in the stands. That was interesting. So that was an interesting plot point. So, Sar, good question.
For sure. Yeah. So that reminds me. At one point in time, there was a time, 70s, 80s, when they won their first titles before Florida State got their titles. You could have argued it. But then you become bitter rivals, tit for tat for 10, 15 years. The 90s happens. Florida State kind of takes an edge. Miami all of a sudden wins. In 2001, they have this, whatever, widely considered one of the best teams ever. At that point in time, this was a really good question. I mean, a really good question. Given what Florida State did in the 90s, given what they did in the 80s, and then winning one right there at the beginning of the 21st century, that would be a great question. But then you had the last 20 years. You can't erase. It's working on 25 years now since that national title. Florida State won it all in 13. They've got a 29-game win streak, a 19-game win streak, a 9-game win streak, several other, smaller ones in between. However many, 10 ACC championships, all these BCS bowls, 50% or like a 70%, I think, bowl winning streak. Miami's 1 out of like the 10 bowls they've made. It's really embarrassing, and we won't just shit on them the whole show. But yeah, there may have been a time, like Jen said, back when TVs were in black and white and VHS was a thing and all that. But yeah, as of right now, there's no argument. It's Florida State all day long until they build a stadium. I don't even care if they win.
Yeah, I just say this. Over the last 11 years alone, even including Florida State's previous losing seasons prior to 2022, we still won more games in that span than Miami has. So it is what it is.
The
better program
it's
overall.
Not really one of the bigger brands,
No,
at one point in time, but just not in this day and age.
Yeah.
Deadfield jumps off the top rope with a $10 super chat. Who's the bigger brand? That's easy. It's FSU ever since Bobby Bowden already made my national power.
So thank you, Bobby.
He's pretty much saying ever since Bobby Bowden, it was already known. So thank you, Bobby. Jeff Hill. Yeah, as a fan, I agree with you 100% on that one, my friend. Got to give it a little bit of the talk show breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
King Spleen talking about the 4 million viewers. Yeah, that chart, that's all FSU Clemson all the way. Miami has a big shot down to the next best thing in the ACC. And again, still probably the third best program in the ACC. But when you talk about FSU and Clemson, it is just a different thing right now, unfortunately for you guys. All righty. Anything else, guys? I think I've about ran through everything I have on my mind.
Yeah, there was a question about Josh Petty I saw in the chat. Do you think he lands? I'm still confident, highly confident. I know we talked offline about, and I mentioned that Georgia Tech side is starting to believe, possibly that they could land his services and his signature. I'm still very high on signing him. I think just it's too many things in Florida State's favor to get his signature in December, and his commitment when he makes his commitment next month. I think it will be Florida State.
What day does he commit exactly?
Is it August what, George?
August 12th, I believe.
12th, yeah.
It was known forever, and then last week, 247 and On 3, everybody reported it like it was breaking news. August 12th. But as far as I know, it's still August 12th.
Yeah. We also have Ladarian Clarity. You saw that one prognosticator put a crystal ball in for us, and then this week he gets a crystal ball to Ole Miss. So that's one to watch out for also.
Our guy is messaging back with retorts. Oh, that's funny. I guess he says he's from Texas, so in his lifetime, the championships and all that. And I hear you. That's the one argument that Miami fans make. 5 rings and all that. But again, that was a long time ago.
Long.
Long. 25 years is a long time. I mean, just think about pretty much anybody playing college football right now was either an infant or wasn't born. Like
Warren Sapp has sold all his. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, and their height.
Don't even have any left.
If you look at our ages now, at their height, we were either children or weren't born. So at their height in the 80s, I mean, I was a little kid running around. So, I mean, we all know it was a different climate then. A lot of kids didn't leave that area like they do now. So you see the landscape of recruiting now. It wasn't like that 35 years ago. Kids stay home. Now they want to venture out. They go further places, they go up north, the Midwest and stuff. So, being able to keep a lot of that homegrown talent, it's still there. The talent's never left. It's just the team itself or the program itself is not what it was, and it won't be able to reach those heights because college football has changed. Just look at it that way, George.
Yeah, they got to build a stadium.
Yeah.
I don't, even if you have to get something going. It's a chicken or egg situation, and this kind of what we're talking about made me think of that 2013 national championship for Florida State, because Florida State could have been in the same situation if they didn't cash in when they had Jimbo Fisher and win that national title. We could be looking all the way back to 1999. But luckily for us, we had 2010 through 2016. We were going to BCS bowl games every year. We won the national title. We were in the first playoff. So when you think about these kids that are recruits now, these class of 27, 26, 25, when were they? Where were they when Florida State was winning a national title? Yeah. Well, you go back 10 years from being 17. Yeah, okay. Well, they were like in 3rd grade. So it gets harder and harder. But, you either got to be relevant now or you had to have been relevant when they were kids.
Yeah.
And if you span that gap, which is basically what Miami's done, don't get me wrong, they're going to do all right in recruiting, but I don't know. We'll see. Just my conspiracy theory on it.
I'll add one more thing. If the landscape of college football is like it is today was 30 years ago, how many more, what would conversations would we be having now? How many opportunities would Bobby have had to redeem that wide right or that one loss, because he would have had a playoff to make up for that? There's a lot of opportunities in which, Florida State was finished the second best team in the country, but that one game or that one loss, it cost us. We all know the history. So I'm just saying, speaking to the facts of how the landscape is today makes a big impact on what you said, those programs yesterday and to now. You know, if the teams from the 90s would have won a lot more titles. We played for damn near what, four straight in the late 90s. And then if you take one more thing, you take the 2012 team. That team was a national championship caliber team. We end up winning it in 13, but if it wasn't for one mistake or situation in NC State, we're looking at back-to-back fucking national championships. So,
Yeah, that was that's still a soft spot all
yeah,
these years later, because
Ugh.
that 2012 team was just as talented
yeah,
everywhere except for one
Bjorn
position, and
Warner
that's not even
deserved
to
it.
talk
He
shit about
deserved it.
just
Okay.
not even to talk shit about EJ. Like, he's
no,
still like whatever top 5, wherever you want to put him.
yeah,
But it's just hard to play right before a guy comes in and is a Heisman candidate. So you always wonder, what would have happened if they would have worked him in at the end of the season? What would have happened here?
mhm,
But yeah, you just can't score 17 points or whatever the hell we did against NC State. Like, it's
yeah,
just, damn, how do we do that against Clemson? And then
yeah.
that's football. That is
That's
football, and
football.
that's kind of what's infuriating about Jimbo Fisher's whole program to begin with. When
Yeah,
you only play 50 plays, you give a team a chance to get lucky and win. That's something that's changed a lot about college football. There used to be
mhm,
a lot of that going on, more so then, and even more so
mhm,
before then. That was even kind of an archaic system he ran then. But
mhm,
like, if you've got better players, like way better players than the other team, the more plays, the better, the
yeah,
better chance of that athleticism showing out. So in 2015 and 2016, we've got these 5 stars all over the field, and they get whatever, like 2 targets.
yeah.
So, in the king, like in the era of the transfer portal, could you imagine what 2017 would have been like for Florida State? Holy shit. I mean, we would have cleared house. The whole freaking
With it,
team would have cleared out.
hemorrhaging players. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think Bjorn Warner deserved that year. He was amazing. Please bring him back at some point. I would love to see him again. Wouldn't you guys? Like, I love that guy.
Yeah.
Big,
I
big
don't know.
Jeremy Renner fan. Always been a big fan. He's always been a bit hard to track. I
Yeah.
think he speaks a little English, but he totally is one of those guys that's like gonna play it off like no English. He's just gonna be quiet.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I don't know. I think he comes from a little bit of money wherever he's from over there. It's like one of those things. I've always been a fan, but there's never enough Bjorn Warner content out there. He got in and out of the NFL. He kept his head down. But yeah, definitely a big fan. I'd like to meet him. He was a
Yeah.
fun guy to cheer for. He made some big plays on that defensive line back then. He had what was it, the 2011 or the 2012 game when he just grabbed the ball from the Florida quarterback and took it for a
Uh-huh.
touchdown. That was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. But all right, guys, I think I'm about out. Jen, is there anything you want to share with the audience? Anything in particular on your mind before we wrap the things up today?
No, I think I'm good, guys.
Deshawn, well, definitely let everybody know about your YouTube channel and where they can find you over there.
All right. It's Double D's Let's Talk Ball podcast, Double D's Gaming, D's Corner, DSCORNER, D's Corner. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe when you check in. Please like, share, and subscribe to this show. And that's it. Thank y'all.
Boom, you heard it here first. Get over there and log in, sign up, all that good stuff. Make sure you hit the like and sub button right here, and we will see you guys next time. Go Knowles, baby.